They say the gods give voice to the brave, but what happens when that voice falls silent? When the war cry becomes silence, does the warrior disappear or is he reborn? This is the story of Eirik, the Silent, a Viking who lost his voice but found something far more powerful, the strength of resilience. Eirik was a warrior like few others, strong as the trunk of an oak, agile as the wolf in the frozen forests. But what made him truly feared was his roar. They used to say that when Eirik roared, enemies trembled even before his axe struck. That morning, the sky was stained with grey. The enemy clan crossed the fjords. Eirik led the front line, screaming the names of the gods with fury. Then it happened. An arrow pierced the sky as if time had stopped and struck his neck. It wasn't the axe that fell, it was the voice. Eirik survived, but something inside him did not. He could no longer scream, no longer command, and in the eyes of his own people, he was no longer a warrior. The days that followed were filled with silence and mockery. A Viking who can't shout? How will he lead in battle? Perhaps the gods have forsaken him. Eirik didn't answer, not because he didn't want to, but because he no longer could. He understood then. There was no place for him there anymore. In the stillness of the night, with no words and no goodbyes, he left, heading north, to the lands where the winds whisper wisdom, and where they say even silence speaks. The cold cut through his skin like invisible blades. The snow covered all paths, but Eirik kept walking. Each step northward was a deeper dive into himself. No voice to speak, no clan to hear. All that remained was his own silence. For weeks he faced solitude. Hunger gnawed at his bones, the cold bit at his soul, but he did not turn back. Until one day, high in the frozen mountains, Eirik found an old crooked wooden cabin, covered in moss and silence. There lived Freya, the ice sage, a woman with deep eyes who spoke little and heard everything. She wasn't surprised by Eirik's arrival, as if she had been waiting for him, and without a word, she welcomed him in. For days she observed him. Eirik tried to communicate, but she only smiled, as if she understood what lives beyond words. One night, as the wind sang through the dry branches, Freya spoke. "You lost your voice, but not your strength. To scream is easy. To endure in silence, that is hard. The wind doesn't speak, Eirik, but it moves oceans. Be like the wind." And in that moment, something awakened within him. The pain still lived there, but no longer defined him. Silence was no longer weakness. It became his shield, his blade, his power. And so, the silenced warrior became a disciple of silence. He learned to listen to the world without trying to control it, to read the movement of the trees, to respect time, and to trust in his own presence. When he finally left the cabin, Freya said only, "Go." The world needs warriors who do not shout. As Eirik descended from the mountains, winter was ending, but in his village, a new storm was rising. A rival clan, known for cruelty and numbers, was marching across the land of his people. The elders were anxious, the young confused. There was no leader, no plan, only fear. Then they saw a silhouette approaching, a man with an axe on his back, and the presence of a contained thunderstorm. It was Eirik. No one had expected him, no one had called him, but upon seeing him, all voices fell silent. He said nothing. He simply looked into each warrior's eyes, made simple gestures, marked positions, drew strategies in the dirt. At first they hesitated, but there was something in that silence, a steadiness, a certainty, an unshakable peace. And so they followed Eirik. The battle was fierce, but the warriors didn't fight as before. They fought as those who protect more than their lives. They protected their honor, their memories, their hope. When the last enemy fell, all eyes turned to Eirik. He did not smile. He did not shout. He simply raised his axe to the sky as one who thanks the gods and the wind. From then on, Eric was known as the Silent One. Not because he had no voice, but because he had discovered that a true leader doesn't need to be the loudest, just the most grounded. That strength is not in the noise, but in the resilience of those who keep going, even when everything seems lost. And to this day, on cold northern nights, the elders tell children, if one day you lose everything, remember Eric, the man who lost his voice and found himself. How many times have you felt like you've lost something essential? Courage, strength, maybe even your voice. The truth is, we all go through winters of the soul, moments when nothing makes sense, when we feel forgotten, left behind. But maybe, just maybe, that's when our true transformation begins. Eric teaches us that resilience is born in silence, that you don't need to prove anything to anyone. You just need to keep going, one step at a time, even when no one sees, even when no one believes. Now I want to hear from you. What was a moment in your life when you had to be like Eric and keep going in silence? Share your story in the comments. You might inspire someone who's facing their own winter right now. Write, I am like Eric, if this story spoke to your heart. And if you believe in the power of inner strength, resilience, and ancient wisdom, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and join us on this journey through stories that awaken the soul and call forth the warrior within. Because sometimes, silence is all we need to remember who we truly are.